Everybody, it's the Combatcast. It's man they call Dave, Chevy. We got a Jack show today. So much to talk about in combat sports. But first, let's talk about that sponsor.
Yeah, we are now sponsored by Game Up. Happy to have them with the podcast. They make a thirst-quenching adult beverage with a special blend of electrolytes. So it's a hard hydration drink. They have 4 great flavors currently: fruit punch, orange, lemon lime, and grape.
That's right. And only 110 calories per can. Low carb. So get out there and get some Game Up. And Chevy, let's tell people what we got coming up.
All right, March 22nd, UFC Fight Night, Ribas versus Namajunas. Happy to see Rose back. Tough matchup to come back to, though. And then March 29th, UFC Fight Night, Blanchfield versus Farrow. Good flyweight matchup. And then April 5th, UFC Fight Night, Vittori versus Allen. Some big middleweights going head-to-head.
Who do you see? Well, we'll talk about it as we come closer. That's an interesting matchup, though.
Yeah,
Allen is kind of slowly climbing, looking good, but Vittori's one of those guys that's always hard to beat. He's
right. If you can beat him, you're in the top 3.
Yeah, no doubt. All right. Well, like I said, we got a lot to talk about this week, so let's get right to it. Let's start off with UFC 299. This was a banger of a show, a late night, daylight saving times. Fuck you, be damned. Yeah. I'm so mad. But I can't argue with the quality of this show. Chevy, and before we get in this main card, any fights you want to just bring up or announce?
I'll just shout out to I think all these guys won performance bonuses except for maybe Kyler Phillips, who I thought deserved one. He looked great against Pedro Munoz, but shout out to Michel Pereira. He had a great TKO, or no, he could have got the TKO, but he ended up jumping on the neck for a submission against Oli Jacek. And then Curtis Blades had a TKO over surging contender Jaltian Almeida.
Yeah, I mean, good for Blades. We'll see if that puts him in a position maybe with Aspinall coming up next, because we know Aspinall's going to be waiting on Stipe and Jones to fight each other, and who knows if he'll ever get to fight one of them too. So.
Yeah, I don't even want to get into that.
Why don't we start off with the main card?
All right. Petr Yan versus Song Yadong.
All right, Yan beat up Song Yadong here, basically. Song Yadong came out swinging early on, but just the more this fight went on, Yan just showed where he was just better all around. He could hang into striking, and you take him down. He just beat him up, and I don't really know how to describe it. He just beat up your dong, buddy. All right.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Dong jokes aside, though, I'll let you comment about this, but I was thinking, I like to throw a little matchmaker. I thought a great potential fight for Yan next, because he's going to have to be on the come up here, and he's going to be waiting. The winner of Cody Garbrandt, Davison Figueiredo. I think Figueiredo's probably going to win that fight, but if Cody wins, whatever. Either way, it's a name opponent, and it's something to keep Yan busy.
Yeah, that might be too low ranked for that. Maybe if Davison wins, I think Cody's got a lot to do to get back up into that territory. But Davison, he's going to get moved right along if he gets especially a finish over a name like Cody. But as far as the fight versus Song, I was talking last week, has Yan lost his edge, or has he just been unlucky? Well, he certainly hasn't lost his edge. He looked absolutely fantastic. His timing for the takedowns in between Song's striking was phenomenal. He looked great. Song's still young, so I'm sure he'll be back. Probably a good learning lesson for him. But I'd like to see Yan make a run back towards the title. He is a very skilled opponent, or a very skilled fighter, so he can make it back there for sure.
For sure.
All right, let's move on to the next fight. Gilbert Burns versus Jack Della Maddalena.
Good fight. I think we both picked Jack here. Or did you pick Jack too? I don't remember.
No, I think I picked Gilbert.
You did. Okay. Well, it was looking good for Gilbert for a while. It wasn't that Jack was outclassed or anything per se, but Gilbert just looked like he was doing enough to win this fight. And the corner told Jack, they were very honest with him, you're going to need a finish. And he got it done. Jack Del Maddalena has shown that he is a mentally tough guy. To me, that's what I got in my notes. This guy is just very mentally tough. And I would love to see him fight Ian Gary next, just because two rising stars. Let's see what happens.
He called out Shavkat, so
Yeah.
I definitely am leaning towards that one because I think somebody's definitely getting finished in that fight.
Mm-hmm.
But Ian Gary is also a good shot. I don't think Ian wants that fight personally. I'm sure he's confident, but I think he likes to make pretty good business decisions on who he fights. So
I'm going to say the UFC doesn't want that fight.
Yeah, also that. Yeah. So,
yeah.
But yeah, JDM showed that he really is a top level guy with a win over, perennial contender Gilbert Burns. So I thought Gilbert came in with the right game plan. He did a great job. Very grappling heavy, like I said he should go, and he was really wearing on Jack and winning those first 2 rounds. I think he even had the first 2 rounds on the scorecards before Jack came out and really put it on him. Terrible reffing from our friend Dan Murgliata. I was screaming at the TV to stop the fight, but he tried to give Gilbert every chance that he could. So I guess I see what he's doing, but Gilbert was just like dead on the canvas while they were announcing Jack as the winner. So he was really out of it. He also he was crying afterwards, which that could be concussion and brain injury, but also very likely that he realizes he's probably not getting back to a title at this point in his career. So bummer for him. But talk about the winners. That's the way history is written. So shout out to Jack. We already talked about who he's going to fight next, but I really want to see the Shavkat fight. That's a stone cold call out too. Nobody's calling out Shavkat.
No, for sure.
5-round main event, not at the Apex. Also, please. All right, let's move on to Kevin Holland versus UFC debutant MVP Michael Venom Page.
MVP. Hey, MVP. He looked a lot better than Kevin Holland here, and I am not shocked he won, but I didn't think he was going to win. And I thought these skills levels were going to be very evenly matched here. I thought Holland would be a little more versatile, and once he got him to the ground, unless Holland decided to just punch with him all the time and strike with him, I thought for sure Holland would get to the ground and submit him. Holland could not get him to the ground. Now, I'm not saying that he couldn't have done something with him, but he only got him to the ground one time. You saw MVP's face really exchange. He really wore his heart on his sleeve. He looked nervous, but he was able to get out of it, and good on him. To me, MVP looks better in this performance than a lot of fights that I saw him in Bellator, where I know he was favored to win, but this was a fight where, it was somebody that could really challenge him in different areas, and I thought he looked sharp. And what a great time to be kind of coming into your own, right? You're going into UFC, and he looks ready for it. So I was impressed. I think we've talked about this before. You mentioned last week. So as far as next fights for him, book him against Wonderboy Thompson, like a striker's delight. If he gets knocked out, oh, well, whatever. That's Wonderboy Thompson. That's one of your, flagship players. And if he beats Wonderboy and knocks Wonderboy out, okay, well, now you got a guy who's beating Holland and Wonderboy, and you got another name in the mix.
Yeah, I really got this one wrong. MVP styled on Holland. Like, literally, he was, like, dancing and emoting and shit. He did what he always does to strikers and stayed elusive at distance and then blitzed in for attacks, and Holland just really couldn't touch him. He couldn't get inside the striking range. And I didn't think about this beforehand. We had talked about how Kevin has a great jiu-jitsu background, but his wrestling is always lacking, and didn't think about how it would be a very tough fight for him to get MVP to the ground, because that's all anyone ever does against MVP is try to take him down. Similar to like Adesanya, he has very good takedown defense because he knows that's where he's weak. So, Kevin just couldn't link it to get it to the ground. So, yes, I want to see MVP versus Wonder Boy, but I've thought about that a little bit more since the fight happened, and both guys are counterpunchers, so there is a possibility we just see them staring at each other from across the cage, similar to like Adesanya versus Anderson.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that doesn't happen. It has potential to be a very exciting fight, and I do want to see it, but I don't think everyone should just assume that someone's going to go to sleep in that one for sure, other than maybe the fans. All right, let's move on to what was our most anticipated fight. Dustin Poirier versus Benoit Saint Denis.
You know, a lot of times the best part about MMA or any sport is you get invested in somebody. You get invested in a team, right? You know, usually with team sports, you get invested with whoever your team is. You know, it might be the Patriots, the Jets, whatever. In MMA, it's a little more personal, right? Because it's a one-on-one fighter, and sometimes we get invested in these fighters. And I can safely say with Chevy and myself, Dustin Poirier is one of those guys for us. You know, we love this guy's story. He was one of the first guys when I really started watching MMA and UFC in particular. Dustin was one of the guys just kind of coming up. Chevy, a couple years behind me, a year or two, he saw the same thing. And I remember in particular watching him get knocked out by Michael Johnson on a Fight Night card. And I thought, okay, like I really like this guy, but he's probably never going to be near the top. He's going to be right in the middle. Boy, was I wrong and happy for it, because it was one of those things where I really learned, one, anything can happen in MMA, and two, there are people that are going to improve and go up that ladder, and then there's going to be a decline. And that's kind of what happened there. No offense to Michael Johnson, but Michael Johnson's career never really propelled after that. Dustin did. Dustin went back to the drawing board, and Dustin kept winning fights. And anyway, we knew going into this, we both picked Dustin, but we admit that we could have been picking with our hearts, but we saw how it might play out, where, you know, Saint Denis might come out full of fire, and boy, that's exactly what happened. He went for that finish. He had no fear. Dustin did get touched up a little bit, but Dustin kept, he hung in there. And every time they'd get in that clinch, that dirty boxing, we could see where Dustin was kind of connected, right? In my mind, I don't remember this now, but I think Dustin probably lost the first round. And yeah, there was even a point where you were wondering if it was a 10-8, but there were a few moments. He kept going for that guillotine choke where he yelled. Chevy in particular is yelling, so frustrated. The corner was frustrated. And Dustin's like, no, I'm going to go for guillotines. And hell, he's the fighter. And he knows what he's doing. So good on him. But in the end, man, it was one of those moments, at least where we were watching, where we were both jumping up, screaming. And it was just, to me, it was the highlight of this whole show. Like, this was a good card. It was a solid card. But when that happened for us, it turned it into a great card. So awesome for Dustin Poirier. It's hard to pick a fight for Dustin next because he's near the top. And unfortunately, coming off that loss to Justin Gaethje, you can't say he deserves a title shot, but what's going to happen? So let's see how things shake out with Justin and Max. Because if there's an opening where someone gets injured, or even if Justin loses, they're 1-1 against each other. That could be a good trilogy fight, and then maybe the winner could, So there's options, but right now, Dustin takes some time off, enjoy some time with your family, but I look forward to when this guy fights next. Must-see TV.
I know that during like media workups and stuff, Islam said something to Dustin about, go out there, get this win, and I'll see you in June. And then I saw Ali, his manager, also tweeted something about that. Seeing everyone else in the division's tied up, we'll see you in June. So, I mean, Dustin is such a name, big money fight for the champ. So I can see him kind of jump in the queue, and this would be his last opportunity. I assume if he goes in and loses that, he probably retires. But I'm not so offended if they give him the title shot. Clearly, the UFC is all about that, as we're going to talk about in the next fight, jumping him up the rankings to give him title shots. But that possibly could be next. The division's pretty tied up. But going back to this fight, who went basically exactly the way that I thought it was going to go. once the fight got up against the fence and became like dirty boxing in the pocket, that's where Dustin thrives, and he got the finish. It does seem like BSD was fighting on antibiotics due to a staph infection he had on his forehead, which is unfortunate. Antibiotics kill your cardio immediately. And we did mention that he did look like he was breathing heavy in the second round, but I don't know if it really made that much of a difference. That shot would have knocked him out anyway.
Yeah, because that could have changed his fighting style. And I think that's what we really saw him tired out was he was just going all out for growth here, and he wasn't able to put away Dustin. But would he have fought that way? I probably would have anyway. But maybe this had something to do with it too. You never know.
Yeah, I was impressed with his grappling for sure, and he was going all out at Dustin and did have him wobbled. But Dustin did what Dustin does, and he ended up getting the finish and folded him. So shout out to Dustin Poirier. BSD will be back for sure. Absolutely. I don't think this slows him down very much at all. So I'm not sure what's next for him, but I want to see Dustin hopefully get a title shot. All right, let's move on to the main event. Sean O'Malley versus Marlon Vera.
All right. Yeah, Marlon Chito Vera. Hey, it was a big opportunity for him, but me and you disagreed on this one. I said I thought Sean's improved enough where he would really showcase. I did think Vera's style would make it difficult in the sense he'd always be in the fight. And boy, he was. Like Dana White even says, I think it might be almost impossible to finish Chito Vera after watching that tonight. And
yeah, that knee that he ate was incredible that he stayed up.
Yeah. Yeah, Chito's got a hell of a chin. In the end, Sean O'Malley put on a clinic though. And there's no doubt, there can't be really any doubt now that this guy is improved. He's one of the, you could say he's the best bantamweight in the world because he's the bantamweight champion. But even if you looked at it from not that standpoint, just a skill level, you have to acknowledge this is one of the elite bantamweights in the world now. He is such a great striker. He's such a sharpshooter. And I think that's what's going to make him dangerous for everybody. Now, as far as the fight goes next, it's Merab. Merab deserves this more than anybody. And I put a thing out today on social media. Who would you pick? And somebody actually I had a great response because I said I would pick Merab, but I could see how does it go. And he asked me, but would you bet on it? And it's like, no, I wouldn't bet on it because you would.
So no, that's a good question.
Yeah, because it's such a different contrast in styles. The way O'Malley wins is he's going to have to clip him. And he's clearly capable of clipping anybody. He's shown that his striking skills are that good. He can clip anybody. But if he doesn't clip him, it's going to be a long night. And here's the other thing, too. I know Merab has a couple early losses. There was that weird submission loss where the ref stopped it, but he never tapped out and he wasn't really out. Has Merab been knocked out? No, I didn't think so.
Don't think so.
That's the other factor. I haven't seen anybody been able to really lay out Merab or anything like that with strikes. So I would pick Merab, but I don't feel comfortable betting on it.
Yeah. I know that Sean has been feeling the water for this Topuria fight, jump in the weight class. No weight class jumping until you have 3 title defenses. That should be the rule. At least 3 title defenses. We don't want to hear about you being double champ and stuff. Topuria he just won the belt. Like, it's so crazy that they want all these people to just fight champions. Like, let's clear out a weight class or something before we do this.
To be fair, I'll finish. Dana actually said, I'm not looking to do that. He says, I don't want to do that right now. Now, Sean O'Malley does.
Yeah, Dana says a lot of shit, so...
Yeah, but that's one's been consistent. I've been watching these press conferences afterwards because Topuria is talking about that too. And Dana says that right now, I don't want to see it. I believe right now, I think there was a time when you had your Conor McGregors and everything like that, and they were riding that momentum. Like he says, I'm not into boxing matches or crossovers anymore. I believe that now. But I think it's because we had this big star in Conor McGregor. He's crashed and burned. Also, coincidentally, though, the UFC is a hot brand right now. They're selling out arenas constantly. This is the 4th biggest show they've ever done. So I think at heart, Dana prefers his champions fight. Don't get me wrong. I think if he thought it was a huge, huge money-making experience and not a huge gamble, that this guy O'Malley's going to get pieced up, because the Poirier, that's a totally different animal.
Yeah, it damages your champion, which is a selling point. So you don't want to do that. And so I get what he's doing. He's trying to protect his moneymaker. So, but as far as the fight with Cheeto, I was off when I said that Sean has not improved. He looked absolutely fantastic. Goes back to that saying where you get 30% better when you get the belt. I mean, he just looked so great. Cheeto really had no answer for Sean's footwork. He pretty much danced around Cheeto the whole night. He just dove in, landed a few shots, would come back. And when the only thing Cheeto could do was blitz him, which he was very unwilling to do, because Sean would land on him as he's coming in and then circle off. And Cheeto really just couldn't get it going. He did land that one body shot like at the bell that really hurt Sean. Would have been interesting if that happened earlier, but it didn't. So shout out to Sean O'Malley. Congrats to him. It goes back to the fact, though, we were talking about with Dustin, Cheeto was like number 6 or something like that, and really only got this title shot based off the fact that he beat Sean O'Malley before, so there was a storyline. Are there more deserving and way tougher matchups for O'Malley? Yes, obviously we're talking about Merab, but Corey Sandhagen's out there. Umar Nurmagomedov he's not quite there, but he's coming. There's a lot of very tough matchups, so I understand Sean wanting to jump to featherweight to try to make the most out of being champion as he can while he has the belt. He's already gone on record saying now that he's won the belt, the belt really doesn't matter at all. So he's trying to, discredit it for when he loses it in the future. That, he's like Conor, he's above having the belt and all that. So, great performance from him. He looked absolutely great. I want to see what his ground game looks like. Nobody can really get him to the ground. We know Merab will get him down at some point. So I hear he does have a pretty good jiu-jitsu game, and he's got the build for it, so it's possible that he's pretty good.
I know.
We're gonna find out.
Had that image in my head. Imagine what we're all gonna have to think if O'Malley taps out or even chokes out Merab. That's gonna be a shit. Now
it'd be crazy.
Yeah, this is a different level.
Yeah,
great event, but we don't stop. UFC Fight Night, baby. Here we go.
Yeah. So let's talk about just a couple prelims. Just shout out to Jacqueline Amorim. I think that's how her last name is pronounced. Versus Corey McKenna. Corey McKenna is up and comer. Actually, both girls are up and comers. Have a few first round finishes on the prelims. Keep an eye out for that one. And then leading off the main event, Gerald Meershaert versus Bryan Barberena. Bryan Barberena is never in a boring fight. Gerald Meershaert gets touched up. He's a great submission guy, so that's one to keep an eye out for as well. But let's get right into the co-main event. Bryan Battle versus Ange Loosa.
Ange Loosa. All right, Loosa is 10-3, 5 KOs, 1 subs, 4 decisions, and he's won 3 out of his last 4. Bryan Battle, 10-2, 3 KOs, 5 subs, and 2 decisions. I am really impressed with Bryan Battle so far. I like this guy a lot. I don't really know. He's got 5 subs. I'm going to say Battle with a submission round 2.
Yeah, I haven't seen much of Ange, but I know Bryan is UFC tested. I know he has a bunch of finishes. I think he only has 1 or 2 decisions in the UFC, but I'm going to pick him by decision. I think this is going to be a pretty closely contested fight. Possible that we get a very good war. Bryan's up for a war, so I'm going to pick Bryan by decision. All right, move on to the main event. One of my favorite fighters, Tai Tupvasa versus Marcin Tyburia.
Tyburia is 24-8, 9 KOs, 6 subs, 9 decisions. He's won 7 out of his last 9. His last loss was to Tom Aspinall by TKO in round 1, but there's no shame in getting knocked out with Tom Aspinall. So Tai Tupvasa, though, what an interesting case this guy is. 14-6, 13 KOs, and 1 decision. He's lost 3 in a row. All right, so you can argue he needed this. He's been finished 3 times in a row. But before that, he won 5 in a row, and he finished all 5 of those fights.
One of those being the Black Beast.
Yeah, this guy is a finish or be finished type guy. So for that reason, I'm going to pick him. I think he needs this. But I do think the later this goes, like this, once we start getting towards the end of round 2, I'm going to start to really favor Tyburia here. You know, he has a way of winning fights like that too. I feel like he has a way, if it's going decision with heavyweights, especially if it's not the most aesthetically pleasing fight, like he knows how to win those fights. So I'm going to pick with my heart a little bit, but I do think he needs to win it early. So I'm going to Tupvasa, round 1 TKO.
Yeah, Marcin's a tough matchup, but I'm rooting for Ty. I'm with you. He needs to avoid being taken down at all costs, not just because he has 0 ground game, but because that will sap his cardio very quickly. He does not have the best cardio, but he won't give up on himself even if he gets really tired. So hopefully he can keep it standing. If he keeps it standing, I think he gets a KO. And I'm going to agree with you. I'm going to say he gets that in round 2.
All right. So before we get out of here, let's talk a little bit of boxing. All right. A little boxing news. We had a big fight over the weekend with Joshua and Francis. But before we talk about that, let's talk about this announcement. Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson, 57 years old now, though. 58. But what do you think, Chevy? What about this?
First of all, I did not believe that this was real when the news came out. I wish it wasn't real. I mean, so shout out to Jake. I keep saying this. I'm not a big fan of him, but it is impressive what he's doing, just making money off fighting all these guys. Yeah. Yeah, it's on Netflix. That'll be a big thing for Netflix. I know they wanted to break into the live sports to justify their like $40 a month or whatever they're charging now. But I just, it's hard to tell how this fight is going to go because we don't know what we're going to get from Mike Tyson. Obviously, he hasn't fought in 20 years. Yeah, I don't count
about a year or 2 ago, right?
Yeah, I don't count that. That was a fake fight. So is this going to be a real fight? I don't think that Jake does those fake fights. I think that they're going to have a real fight. Yeah. The thing with Tyson is like you see these videos, and I think they're a couple years old, but not so old now, of him hitting pads, and he looks terrifying as ever. Yeah. But then you also see him like walking around with a walking stick, like he can barely move around, and he's like some weird shaman now, like just does a bunch of mushrooms and talks about philosophy, which I love all that, but does he still have that desire to be a fighter the way that he used to be? Because that's a different person. And if he does have that and he can channel that, he's going to destroy Jake Paul so bad, like life-changing. I don't care if he's twice his age. He'll take his head right off. The thing is we just don't know what we're going to get.
I need to see what they both look like going into this before I make a prediction.
I think Jake is bigger, like physically larger than, especially at this point, Tyson. But
yeah, I'd have to see what they look like going in. Jake Paul, I don't know. What has his fights been at? His weight? I thought he's been fighting like
he's fought all over. I think from 170 to like I think his most recent one was 200 pounds or something, or 195 or something like that.
Interesting. Yeah, it's a freak show. It's going to be on Netflix though. They're in a stadium, I think, in Arlington. So I imagine he'll do some big business and he'll catch names. And this is probably what Jake Paul wants. In his mind, he's probably setting himself up for an easy victory because Tyson is old and he hasn't been there. But yeah, I don't know what to think, man. I could see anything happening here. I could see anyone getting brutally knocked out because it is almost a 60-year-old man. But that almost 60-year-old man is Mike Tyson. So yeah. It's fucking – and Jake Paul has put on some solid performance as a boxer. But it's not like you would say Jake Paul is a representation of boxing. He is boxing. Right?
He's never be a former world champion in boxing, though.
Yeah.
This is a different level.
Now, that being said, I mean, it's hard to say what you're going to get with these crossovers. Now, we just had it this weekend. Anthony Joshua and Francis. We picked Francis. We were picking with our hearts a bit, but part of that also was the performance Francis put on against Tyson Fury was like not anything we'd seen. We thought what happened this weekend with Joshua, we expected Fury to do that to Francis, but it didn't happen that way. Instead, they go all 10 rounds, and Francis knocks him down, looks the aggressor. And I said on this last week, we don't want to talk about it, but maybe Tyson Fury did take him lightly. And maybe that we're going to find out. We don't know because it's all uncharted territory. I'm going to say it's a little bit of both. I'm going to say Fury took him a little lightly, but also I'm going to say stylistically, Ngannou was an unseen thing in boxing, and it was awkward, and Fury probably didn't know how to deal with that, and he was caught off guard in that way as well. Joshua had plenty. He got to watch him, and it looked like he knew what he was expecting from Francis, and he didn't have any trouble putting him away or getting it done. And Francis even made that switch up and went to southpaw.
That was the mistake. Yeah,
huge mistake, and it just shows that like there was the lack of experience. And so, anyway, it's just you're never gonna know what you're gonna get with these cross fights, and I don't know. I'm kind of done with him, honestly, at this point. I mean, good on Jake Paul, and now that it's on Netflix, I may watch it, because
I bet it'll be a pay-per-view on Netflix, though. The way that ESPN Plus, you have to have the subscription.
Yeah, I'm assuming you're right, but
I don't think they've said that yet, but I assume. Also, with it being on Netflix and Mike Tyson being on the card, the undercard of this may be very good. There could be some good matchups on there, so might be worth watching.
It will be interesting to see how they operate this as a runtime. Are we just going to get this fight on Netflix? Like, you know what I mean? Like they're going to show that, or maybe they're going to do a couple fights. I don't think something tells me it's not going to be traditional long card where we get 5 or 6 matches like early
12 hours. Yeah,
I don't see that happening. I just don't for some reason. I don't think Netflix would operate that way. So we'll see what happens. But going to be some interesting times coming up here in combat sports. But let's get ready. Let's get up for it. Let's speak of Up, our sponsor.
Yeah. Game Up makes a hard hydration adult beverage with a special blend of electrolytes. 4 great flavors currently. You can get them in a variety pack: fruit punch, orange, lemon, lime, and grape.
Awesome. And hey, before we get out of here, too, why don't you tell people what we got coming up for a schedule?
All right, March 22nd, UFC Fight Night, Ribas versus Namajunas. Then March 29th, UFC Fight Night, Blanchfield versus Ferro. And then April 5th, big middleweight matchup, UFC Fight Night, Vittori versus Allen.
And also, I forgot to tell you, Game Up is a low-carb, 110 calories. So definitely drink your Game Up. But don't just take my word for it. Producer Joe will tell you.
If you haven't tried Game Up, then you are missing out. Imagine your favorite seltzer and your favorite sports drink had a baby, but it's way better than that. Each can is 110 calories, low carb, 4.9 ABV. It's a nice light drink that is not light on flavor. Game Up comes in fruit punch, orange, lemon, lime, and grape. Pick it up at Drink.